Welcome, everybody. See people joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, possibly. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. But as you're joining, we are expecting this to be an interactive session today. So just take a moment to say hi in the chat. And I always like to have a little question that we ask people about. So as we head into the holiday season, I'm asking this is a really weird one. What sauce, what condiment, what dressing can you simply not live without? So not picky about how you define that. If you have a creative answer, we'll take it. Bonus points if it's something we haven't heard of or that we can't get locally. Love to hear about those regional distinctives. So if you'll just mention some of that in the chat, as well as maybe where you're joining from today. That's always fun to hear as well. And we'll get started in about another minute. See some reactions from our panelists here. We've got cocktail, barbecue sauce. Mary says stuffing, that's good. Turkey gravy, always good. Ketchup, definitely a classic. Okay, Alice from St. Louis, chili onion crunch. That is one I haven't heard of. So now I have the beginnings of a list of things to start Googling. And I'm actually seeing a lot of chats coming in that are directed specifically to hosts and panelists. You might just check your Zoom chat settings and make sure that it's set to everyone so that everybody can see everyone's chats. That's not something I can enable directly on my end. Sorry about that, but I just double check that to make sure that the chats are going out to everybody. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. Let me just stop that music. All right, perfect. Welcome everybody to the DAP Pro Show today. This is WalkMe's Meet the Experts series, and our objective in this series is to inspire you with innovative examples of DAP in action and takeaways you can use in your strategies today. If you missed it on the slides that we were rotating earlier, just some quick housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded. You will receive a link to that recording within a day or two of the event via email, and we'll also be posting it on the WalkMe World community. You are muted, but as you can tell, we are encouraging lots of interaction. So comments and emoji reactions are really welcome in the chat throughout the event today, and questions are highly encouraged too for our presenters. So to make sure that our presenters and our moderators see those questions, we're going to ask that you use the Q&A option in your Zoom tools at the bottom of your screen, just to make sure those questions stay separate from the rest of the chat. Also, just one quick call out that the newest member of the WalkMe community team is on the call with us today. Alex Jorgensen joined us on Monday this week. So she's our new community manager, and you'll be seeing a lot of her in the community very soon. So hellos and emoji waves to Alex in the chat too. Today, though, on the DAP Pro Show, we're talking about cutting-edge inspiration, advanced DAP in action. We have some awesome presenters today who are going to share what they've been doing to go beyond using WalkMe as just a solution, just to meet a need or solve a problem or provide guidance. They're challenging the DAP status quo to deliver experiences that truly drive tangible business value. So if this is your first time attending, our agenda is split into 3 parts. First, our presenters will each have about 7 to 10 minutes to share their story and present their solutions. Then we'll bring everyone back up on stage, as it were, for a deeper dive via panel discussion. And finally, we'll open it up to your questions. But again, you are free to put those questions in the chat, in the Q&A area throughout the event. Starting us off today, we have Michael Long and Heidi Banks from Jabil. Michael, and you guys can correct me if I got your job titles wrong off of LinkedIn, but Michael is a global source to pay manager at Jabil. Heidi is senior director and engagement partner. And turn it over to you two. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Aaron. I'll let Heidi start. She's going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about who Jabil is. And then I'll take over and talk you through what our solution is and how we're using WalkMe in some novel ways. So go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. Michael's going to share a quick slide just giving you a little bit of background about Jabil. If you've not heard of Jabil before, we're traditionally known as an elite global manufacturing solutions provider. We have over 260,000 employees across 100 locations in 30 countries, and we serve over 450 of the world's most premier brands across 11 market segments. We start off with that just so that you understand the depth and breadth of Jabil as we deploy our WalkMe solutions here, having to deal with many different languages, regions, countries, and we do so with a very small and efficient team. We believe very strongly in what we're doing for guided buying, as Michael will demonstrate to you in just a little bit, so much so that we're both a WalkMe customer and a services partner, helping to deliver the same functionality to other Coupa customers out in the market, wanting to establish similar guided buying practices. So again, thank you for having us today. Again, my name is Heidi Banks, and I've been with Jabil for 21 very short years of my life. So thank you again. And I will hand it over to Michael to lead the majority of our discussion. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Heidi. I'm going to switch views here real quick. I'll try to utilize something a little bit different than PowerPoint slides, just to change it up a bit. So we've got an infographic here. I want to set the stage just a little bit to give you an idea of where we came from when we brought WalkMe on. So Heidi and I are members of the procurement organization. So we don't sit in IT, we don't have any coding background. We're doing all this from procurement professionals' mindset. So when we brought WalkMe on board, we had a little bit different of a goal for it. So I'm going to talk through this in 3 different sections. We'll kind of tell you our challenges that we have in the procurement organization, how we used WalkMe as a solution for those, and then kind of what the results were. And then I'll bounce over into our stage environment. You'll actually get to see Coupa, which is our procurement platform that we put WalkMe on top of, and give you a really brief demonstration of the tool that we've created with WalkMe's help. So within a centralized procurement group, which we sit in, one of the biggest challenges we have is we've taken all the procurement resources from all over the globe and put them in one team that looks and sees the full picture for the entire company. And again, for us, when we're doing that within Coupa, we're putting $6.5 billion through Coupa a year and over 1 million transactions. And we have 48,000 users in the system. And we're trying to look to that across the entire globe. And what challenges our commodity managers tend to have is that they're always balancing these local requirements with regional and global needs. And our goal is to drive the most value. So when we brought WalkMe on board, the first thoughts of it's a great tool for communication, it's a great tool for guidance and training. We wanted to use it as a revenue generator. And how can we solve some of our challenges of balancing these local and global needs to drive revenue? And what I mean by that, so if you're sitting at a site and you need to buy something, you go into the procurement platform and you search for what you need. Well, what a lot of people were doing is they were going to this write a request function that you'll see, and they're just writing a free form request, and they like to go to their local shop. So this is that local versus global need. Or that local shop may be run by someone they know, they have good service with them, but somebody in the central team has negotiated a great contract with rebates, cost savings, great service that they either don't know about or are comfortable with using. So what we've utilized WalkMe for is to help drive them to those strategic options. And every dollar we save, whether it's in a rebate or a better price, goes right back into our bottom line as profit. So that is one of our main challenges, is trying to help these end users get to our strategic partners in a way that they don't need to know who to buy from. They just need to know what they're buying, and do that in a very seamless way. A couple of our other challenges were any new channels, buying channels. We talk about catalogs or new contracts. Communicating that out to 45,000 users in 30 plus countries is a big problem. And how can we use WalkMe to make sure that we're communicating those strategic suppliers and buying channels, again, to drive bottom line value. And the last one was just compliance to policy. So whenever we have some new controls that we can put in place to, again, help guide those users to be compliant to the policy, which drives more bottom line value. So our business case was set for WalkMe, not on some of the great tools that it has for training and guidance, but on the ability to guide our end users to where we as procurement professionals want them to go. And that additionally drives profit for the company. So how do we do that? What we decided is we utilized WalkMe to get in between the user and the supplier selection process. So if they go to that write a free form request, which is kind of a free-for-all, we actually developed a guided buying action bot that asks them a couple of key questions to help them. They only need to know what they're buying. We will take them, and the action bot takes them to the where. So you can kind of see, I know it's a small picture, and I'll show it here on the next screen. But we asked them, what side are you buying, and what side are you buying for, and what are you buying? And then the system actually does an API call back in the Coupa and returns our strategic options. So they said, hey, we actually have a preferred supplier here. Click this button, and it takes them right to it. So they don't have to know where, they just need to have to know what. Every time we show this to a Coupa customer, which we're a Coupa services provider as well, they immediately ask us, how can we get that? Because it really is a game changer in the procurement world when you can get in between your user and your platform and dynamically guide them to where you as a procurement professional want them to go. So what were our results? So immediately in the first quarter where we implemented this, we saw 4% of the users who were interacting with the bot were actually being redirected to one of our strategic catalogs. And that's actually, it may not sound like a big number, but again, keep in mind, we're doing 1 million transactions with 48,000 users. That actually has a big impact. And we saw a direct increase in our catalog adoption of 4% in that same first 3-quarter period. But over the next 14 months, which is how long we've been live with the system, we've seen a 44% increase in our catalog adoption. And you think about it, we're getting anywhere between 3 to 6% rebates back on a lot of these catalogs. And with that volume of spend, we paid for the system in the first few months. Everything after that is pure profit back to our organization. And our senior leadership is incredibly happy with that. So we were able to utilize the WalkMe tool as actually driving revenue back to the company, where in a lot of cases, sometimes this could be seen as an expense to help drive efficiencies, help train users, help guide them where they need to go. But you can actually kind of flip that around and say, how can I use this tool to drive more profit or more revenue for my company? So the bottom line, 3 key points I kind of wanted to get across. And all of you as advanced DAP professionals, really get creative. So you're used to these systems and you're administering these different tools that you've got WalkMe over top of. Sometimes you got to get out of your own head of what the boundaries that system already has in place and start to think, how would I use this if it was perfect for me and my organization? And see if there's a way that WalkMe can help you get there outside of those existing boundaries. It can remove some of those boundaries that your system currently has. It can be quite powerful that way. Next is think about it more as guidance and not about training. So all of these smart walkthroughs and tips, when somebody were to call my admin team, who's the one responsible for training the population, and ask them for help with a process, the guided buying and the walkthroughs that we have is the same way that we would sit next to them hand in hand and walk them through the process. Well, the tool can do that itself, but we can get out to a much larger percentage of the population. So it's not a training tool, it's a really good guidance tool. And the last one is don't set it and forget it. So the insights that WalkMe provides in the admin dashboards, really make sure that you're taking advantage of those and analyzing your content on a very regular basis and then making tweaks to it to get the most value you can out of it. It's really easy to go put your tips in place, put your walkthroughs and whatever chatbots, and then just let it run and let it set. You're not going to get all the value out of it if you don't go back and use those admin tools, and they keep working on the insights, they keep getting better and better, and really make sure that you're constantly tweaking and evaluating your content. Okay. So I'm going to jump over into our platform real quick. I'm going to show you how we're using this in reality. So this is Coupa, for those of you who haven't seen it before. And this little button right here is the one that we're trying to get in between. This is where they go write a free form request. So we have a bunch of catalogs with our negotiated items. They can search for items here, but they just had a tendency to go right here and start typing, and this was the free-for-all. So we wanted to get ahead of them. So this is our stage environment. In production, we have a launcher that sits right over top of this that's invisible. So they think they're clicking on the right request, and actually they're clicking on our guided buying action bot. So I'm going to launch that here. So before they ever get to the form, it asks them 2 questions. Where are you buying for? So I'm in the corporate headquarters, so I'm going to type that one in. Everybody knows their site. And then it's going to think and say, what are you buying? So these are commodity codes that they're used to entering anyway. So I'm going to say, I'm going to buy a laptop. And those 2 simple questions, we can now, from a strategic procurement standpoint, say, I know for St. Pete and for laptops, where I want to send them. So it pulls up, it did an API call, and it pulls up our preferred supplier, which is our HP catalog, and then we have a backup for SHI. So clicking on one of those takes them directly to that supplier's punch out, and then that purchase, we get rebates back, and we have preferred pricing. They always have the option to go to a free form request. And from an end user standpoint, it goes in and it pre-populates the commodity that they just chose, so they don't have to do it again. So, you know, we have still given them the option to continue on. A couple other little ways that even from this point that we'll start helping to guide people. WalkMe is watching everything that they're typing into these different boxes. And based on some of these combinations, it's going to guide them one way or the other. So laptop is still a good example. Is as soon as we put laptop in here, we get an extra little option that says, hey, this should be one of our negotiated catalogs. Why don't you click here to search there instead? And that's just a gentle reminder, and they can continue on to their cart if they needed to. The other way we do it's a little bit more of a firm reminder where we have, say for CAD software, if I go to try and buy from ANSYS, it's going to pop up and say this CAD software requires a ServiceNow ticket. But in this case, we don't want them to ever go purchase directly from ANSYS. If they try and click on this and add to their cart, it stops them in their tracks. People don't like being stopped and said, no, you stop your process. But what's nice about WalkMe here is we actually give them the option and it takes them right where they need to go. Again, don't need to know where, they don't need to know from whom, they just need to know what they're buying. And then procurement's put in the system where we need them to go, and WalkMe takes them there. And this, I'll tell you, is an absolute game changer for us. Driving a lot of true value, hard dollars back to the bottom line. And it's one of our greatest successes when it comes to WalkMe. Okay, so that is all I had to share. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Awesome.
Back over to Aaron.
Thank you, Michael. That was really great. Please remember to go ahead and put your questions for Michael in the chat, in the Q&A. We'll get to those very soon. But next up, I'd like to introduce our guests from MITRE. We have Acacia Matheson, Digital Adoption and Change Transformation Lead, and Nicole August, Digital Adoption Specialist. Welcome, Acacia and Nicole.
Hey, everybody. I think Nicole is going to bring up our slides as soon as she's ready.
Got it. Awesome.
Thank you guys for joining us today, especially those guys on the West Coast. I know it is early, but it's so great to have you here. We are super excited to talk about WalkMe as a Hyperloop. And I actually think you saw a little bit of that in the Jabil presentation too. But what I'm talking about really is just like Elon Musk's Hyperloop, we're starting to use WalkMe in some really interesting ways, kind of as the futuristic rapid transit system that the Hyperloop is intended to be. And we are really trying to get our users from point A to point B or even point C in the fastest way possible. So very quickly, I just want to introduce our team. So Acacia Matheson, hello, I'm the Digital Adoption Lead. Nicole August is here with us as well. Mark Preuss is our WalkMe builder and is not able to make it today. But this is us. We're a very lean team. We also oversee change management strategies for other digital transformation projects at MITRE. So WalkMe is just one component of our service. Let me talk a little bit about MITRE. Fast Company called us the most important company you've never heard of. I don't know if that's good or bad. Hopefully that's changing. We are a not-for-profit company that works across government and the public-private sector. We run what are called FFRDCs, and I had never heard about FFRDCs before I came to MITRE. It stands for Federally Funded Research and Development Centers. So essentially, we assist the United States government with scientific research and development and systems engineering. We have a little over 10,000 employees, plus a good number of contractors, and dual headquarters in Boston and McLean, Virginia. And then we have about a dozen international and domestic sites and another handful that are overseas. So we are pretty spread out in terms of geography and where we sit. We're also really spread out in terms of the projects that we're working on. So we have folks that are working on everything from blue tech to green tech to 6G, GPS, cybersecurity, healthcare, aviation safety, and beyond. And so that's really just to say MITRE it's a very matrixed, complex organization, and we are really excited to introduce WalkMe on top of our tech stack to make things simpler, at least in the digital world. So we've got 3 examples we wanted to show you today. The first is using WalkMe as a cross-app connector. There we go. So we have a ton of applications. I think we all wish that we had sort of one app to rule them all, but that is not at all the reality in most companies. We especially at MITRE, and I think in other organizations, have a highly fragmented environment. We have a role at MITRE called a project lead, and they could be working on different projects year to year, sometimes month to month, depending on what our sponsors and partners need. And it was before we had an intelligent dashboard, which is what I want to talk about, our use of WalkMe today on what we call MyHub. This is a homegrown system. And essentially it's taking all of these data feeds from a bunch of different applications and helping the project leads with alerts and other intelligent information about their projects to really manage those projects. You can imagine before having this, they would have had to drill down into more than a dozen applications to kind of figure out, am I on budget? Do I have resources in place? Like all of these things that go into managing a project at MITRE. And it's very cool. It is very cool. The problem was that when we started doing some user experience testing, some user testing, we really noticed the PLs were getting these alerts and they were snoozing them because they really didn't know what was triggering the alert, why they were getting this alert in the dashboard, and they didn't know which system they needed to go in to fix it. And so our WalkMe team saw this as an opportunity to use WalkMe as a connector. And so what we've done is we've built WalkMe to identify when there's an alert. It is contextual, so it depends on where the alert is in the system. We give them a bit of information about why this alert was triggered. So we're doing a little bit of guidance and training. But then we're really leading them very quickly to a resolution. And that includes reviewing their information and then getting them over to the application in which they need to take action and continuing that guidance based on what they need to do. And this was definitely a game changer because all of a sudden we're not dependent on the PL to have that information. We're just dependent on them going into the dashboard, seeing that they have an alert and following the guidance through to completion. And then they are actually actively managing their tasks and they're actively managing their projects and doing all of the things that the value of MyHub promised. And so it's been a very full way to get people right through the process, take the action, and be done. I think we have a quick video demonstrating the experience. A very quick video. So you can see we're giving them the option there to resolve, and we're bringing them over into our PPM system and providing guidance from there. So let's move on. Nicole, I think you're going to take the next example.
Yes, I am. Okay, so the next stop on our Hyperloop, on our MITRE loop, sorry, I'm going to change the name of it. We're going to talk about our self-service and our chatbot. So first of all, I have to say our chatbot is not an action bot, but we have a great team that is working on this chatbot. And the other great thing that we have here is we've got amazing knowledge articles. Knowledge articles are very complex. They are step-by-step instructions, but Coming new into a company like this that has so much information and so many different resources out there, and this is another great example of where we're making a connection for our users. And so we do have a service desk. They get tons and tons of questions and calls and things like that. So one of the things we wanted to do with this solution was provide a solution that is really a self-service solution. So now the great thing about this is it goes from our action bot into our, it goes from Teams, where the action bot is, all the way through the knowledge articles and to inform them where the knowledge articles are, but then it also steps them through exactly what's going to happen. So here we've got Teams. It takes them right into, this is an Octaverify. Octaverify was a pretty complex solution that we needed to come up with. And so this is one way that we wanted to make sure that it was really simplistic, I guess, for them. This will check to make sure that you if you have Octaverify, then you don't have to do anything. And if you don't have it, then it follows through the steps that you need to take. And the other thing that, oops, let me go back to this one. The other thing I wanted to call out here that I think is very wonderful, and I have to say Acacia is the one that built this one. I think there's a video in here, and I can't pause this. There we go. This very last step, it actually gives you, and I apologize that I have to blur everything out here, but this is a video that shows them exactly what the drop-down views that they're going to see. So we don't leave anything out there for chance. We show them exactly what they need to exactly what they're going to see and what they need to accomplish. And then the last example we want to share with you is this automation versus step by step. So the big question always comes back to, when do you use automation and how do you use automation? And I think Michael said it best. Sometimes this is not training. We do not need to get them to know where they need to complete. For example, this is a form to add a vaccination boost or record. We just want them to complete it. So we are asking somebody to complete this. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes when I'm asked to do something and it's voluntary, it's hard to do because I have to take all these steps to get it done. So this is a case where we want them to get in, get it done. This originally was about a minute process. We saved them 4 steps. Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But we made it easier for each of these users to get in there and get this accomplished. Now, here's what's really great about that. We saved them 20 seconds. So we've got 8,700 users times 20 seconds. That ends up being 48 hours. So just with this one super simple process where we auto-stepped, where we take them directly to where they need to accomplish. We also on here have a spot where we fill out the form for them. That ends up saving our company 48 hours. I don't know, you can probably math that out, put salaries and all that kind of stuff to get a better ROI, but just by saving the amount of time that we did, it's totally worth it. And that was the last example that I have.
Awesome.
We're like a Hyperloop ourselves.
We are.
About 7 minutes, so that's awesome.
Great job. Great examples. Awesome to see both of those, all 3 of those in action. We're going to segue now into our panel discussion. So I'll invite all our guests back up and introduce our moderator today. Andrew Akman is a strategic program manager as part of WalkMe's strategic practices team. And Andrew, it's great to have you on the DAP Pro Show this month.
Thanks, Aaron, and everybody else. It's so great to be here. I'm really excited. Shall I take the stage? Thanks, Aaron.
All yours.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody. These are just such great examples of ways that we could be using WalkMe around our organizations to see really, really big impacts. as we kind of kick off the panel today, I think, you know, when we see these really great examples, some of the thoughts that come to my mind is, how did you actually land on them? Sometimes it's really easy as a WalkMe expert to go in and solve problems and dig in. But I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your process to actually uncover these areas of opportunity for WalkMe's solutions to actually be effective. And some of those questions might include, you know, do you guys work cross-functionally, or do you guys have internal methods of review? Michael, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you started with the procurement process.
Yeah, so if we talk specifically about the guided buying action bot, it's one of those, it's actually kind of an age-old procurement problem. When you're a professional and you go put a ton of work into negotiating a new contract, and you've got great pricing, you're very proud of it, you've got all the savings, you're going to hit your goals for the year, and then you get 6 months into the year and you realize people aren't using it, and you're not, you know, the finance manager comes back and said, you said you saved me $10 million, but I'm not seeing that. So how could we get people? You realize it's the system itself that's allowing them to go somewhere else. And when we put forward and we're trying to select a digital adoption platform, we actually put use cases out there. And this was our #1 use case. We said, if you can solve for this as part of this platform, then you'll fix one of our big problems and you're going to win our business. So we started with our procurement organization and a problem that's been out there for a long time that we didn't have a good solution for. When you have 48,000 users, you're trying to help them all get where they need to go. We put the problem right forward to WalkMe as part of the proof of concept of bringing it on board.
Oh, that's fantastic. And one of the things that you mentioned that you noticed people weren't actually using it in the first place. How did you actually uncover that? Is that something that you were getting reporting on from Coupa or your other software, or is that something you use WalkMe to uncover? I'm curious of how that plays into your iterate approach, right? The point about not setting it and forgetting it. What kind of data points are you actually looking at to figure out if something's good or if there's future areas of improvement?
Yeah, hey,
Michael,
Michael.
part of it was spend analysis. When we're looking and we said, where is the money actually going? We found all this money being spent with the other suppliers that weren't our strategic suppliers. And then when it comes to the WalkMe content itself, we're looking at the analytics and the actual interactions with the action bot to see what are people searching for, and then are they actually following the prompts and going where we want them to go. So you get such good granularity in the back end, and I can tell down to the user where they're at in the world, what commodity they were trying to buy, and where they went. What I typically, and I can get that in a much quicker manner than having to wait for the invoices to come in and get paid and then do a bunch of spend analytics to figure out where's the money going.
Oh, that's such a great example.
And Andrew, we did a guided buying webinar this summer, really highlighting that iterative process. And so often, whether it's looking at insights of processes that are going well or maybe not being used in your application, or it's catalogs that aren't being used, you know, the same foundation is there. You know, change is difficult. People get into old habits of buying from their preferred suppliers, or maybe procurement had a
Nope. Looks like
Heidi
got lost in thought there. Yeah. Awesome. We'll wait to see if she gets back. I think it's a really good point. And one of the things that kind of jumps out at me is also this idea of change management. And I know a lot of people might not have experience in change management. And Acacia, I know that for you, change management is a big part of your role. And you mentioned in trying to work on identifying some of these gaps, you did a lot of user experience, research. And for folks that maybe haven't done a lot of that kind of work, are there any tips or best practices that maybe you could share with folks just to get a better idea of what people are doing underneath the hood with the software applications that they use every day?
Sure. So, I will say in terms of change management, I think one of the nice things of having that kind of framework when we're thinking about WalkMe is, that we're really trying to change a behavior. Like at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. And we have, we have different tools in the toolbox, WalkMe by far being one of the most powerful ones. One of the benefits, I think, for our team that sitting in the IT organization is that we need to get to know all of the applications kind of one by one when we're building on top of them. And while it is definitely time consuming because, kind of you've got to become a Salesforce expert, right? You need to become a P2P expert. It's not our expertise. It's actually an advantage just sitting there and going, if I were a user who just didn't know anything about this, where am I getting stuck? And, sometimes people feel like that's a detriment. I actually think it's a benefit. And then we can say, look, we feel like these areas might be areas where your users are going to get tripped up. Do you agree? Let's have maybe some actual users try this out and let's see where, how they manage it. And so it's a little bit of intuition in there too, to say that makes no sense to me. I'm not steeped in that every day. I don't sit in that every day. It's not my subject. If I were a person coming in and using this application for the very first time, red flag. This is where I would definitely need some help to change my own behavior. So it's good for us, I think, to get that expertise, but not be experts ourselves. User testing, though, it is somewhat of a luxury, I think, to get users to test out the application. Sometimes some organizations are better at building that in. We don't get to do it every time. And that's where we do lean on our intuition and also the insights data, because we can start to see when we set up a funnel, are people taking like a really long time to get through this process? Are they dropping? That's amazing data, because we can't always sit with everybody over their shoulder and say, how are you experiencing this process? So it's definitely something we've leaned on, and our partners are starting to lean on that more as well.
Thanks for that. That's super valuable. I think, one of the things that jumped up as well is this idea of like automating processes versus enabling people. And I think, sometimes I think a lot of folks who are building solutions start to wonder, okay, do I want to guide somebody through this process? Do I want to automate it? Do we want to use WalkMe to do it for them? Or should we be thinking about how we teach people through the process? Do you ever encounter that when you're planning as well? And how do you approach trying to solve for those different types of things? I don't, anybody want to jump up?
I'll jump in. Yeah, we absolutely get that a lot, especially with Workday. We've got a phenomenal Workday team, and they love WalkMe, which is fantastic, and we love them because they love WalkMe. So this is great. But they give us a list. They give us, a 12-part or a 12-step process that they would like us to take, and they want every single step, and they want us to click on every single thing. We've come back and said, we don't need to show them in Workday where they need to find this. There's a lot of shortcuts that we can take, and like our example that we showed, we just want them to get the process and get it done. So if it's a one-time process, automate that. If it's something where they're always going to need to go in and accomplish some sort of process, like every week they have to fill out a time card or something like that, then maybe, we need to train them on how to accomplish that process. I would say more often than not, you can probably auto step it, because one, people can figure out where they are getting to. And once we've gotten them to click on our WalkMe button, we want to get them through that process as soon as possible. So I would say, and I've been building with WalkMe for a while, I would definitely say that when you can, automate what you can.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too, like a lot of the, many times we'll be working with a training team whose background is in instructional design. And so I think, they're always sitting with that teaching lens, like they really want to teach someone how to do something. Which again, I think our team has started to push a little bit on that, to say, what is the end goal? Do they need to know, like really know how to do this process, or do they just need to get the task done? And once we get the answer to that question, we can really, that's when we can figure out, are we stepping through? Are we automating? Or some hybrid piece where we might have an option in a bubble to say, yeah, show me or do it for me. And in that case, we'll just stick in the automation and speed up that process.
I love that. That's so great. And I think, as we're thinking about that information, we did actually get a question to come in through the chat. Got a couple here, but one of them is actually curious, is asking about dealing with things like GDPR at global deployments. We talk about data, we talk about doing that reporting, but I'm wondering if you guys run into that internally at your organizations, having to work through any sort of privacy controls, cookie approvals, or any sort of data regulations that you guys have internally. Can you guys talk about whether that comes up at all in your work and how you guys might get through that?
Yeah, this actually came up for us, and we're recently. So we're doing a bit of services for an external client. We're building out their WalkMe content on top of Coupa, and it just came up with them. So whenever you're taking content and you're starting to make it, what we call it persona based, so we would have to show up just for certain portions of the population, you have to have user data to do that. And companies immediately kind of cringe and go, what personal data are you sharing back and forth? So give you an example, we have two different integrations for employee data. We have an IDP integration for Okta, so we get basic user information of who's logged in. And then we do a data dump from Coupa into WalkMe once a day. But all we're passing, and we scrutinized every field that we're passing back and forth, is very generic data. So you stay away from things like phone numbers and real addresses, no job codes, stuff like that. We go to more geographic locations, department functions, and like a single sign-on identifier. And just with using some of those basics, you can really target your communications and your content to the relevant population without having to know what their job grade is, what their actual address is, those things that people tend to have an issue when it comes to GDPR stuff. So keep it as generic as possible, but you can still get the information you need to properly segment your content.
That's a really great insight. Thanks, Michael. I think all that comes together and it starts to tell the story, right? You talked about the 4%, Michael, in your example, that was a huge bottom line impact, right? Acacia and Nicole, right? There's so much coming in terms of the impact you guys are making within your team. But like if a tree falls and no one's there to hear it, right? Does it make a sound? And, with the teams that we're talking about here, obviously a lot of money savings is going to be tell a really big story. But I'm curious about, what other teams and how do you go about sharing some of the results that you're seeing internally? Are you bringing this information into meetings? Do you guys have any sort of emails where you communicate this out to the broader organization? Curious how you guys go about communicating this to other teams and what kind of information you share across your organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting what Acacia was talking about with all the different apps that we have. So, everybody's using all these different applications, and we have so many people utilizing for us Coupa, and they start seeing the functionality of what WalkMe is doing in that app. And when they're the owner of another app, they immediately come to us and go, "What was that? How did you do that?" And then the conversation gets rolling. And I can't tell you how many demos we've done internally of what we've built with WalkMe already on how it can help other applications. So for us, it was kind of organic word of mouth. As soon as somebody used it in one and they really like it, they want to know, how can I use that to help to make my world easier? So for us, it started off organic, and now we've had quite a few internal demos to the point of I made a recording. When somebody asks for it, I can just send them the recording and say, "Hey, watch this."
Oh my, do you ever find that people are showing up with the solutions they have in mind for you, and then you're actually kind of asking them to take a step back so you can break it down and almost re-educate them as to what they're doing? I'm sure a lot of people become WalkMe experts when they see some of these solutions out there.
Yeah, absolutely. People's minds start spinning immediately on what perfect could look like, and then we try and solve it together.
I love that. I don't know, Nicole or Acacia, do you guys have any examples of where you work with other people in the organization and you have to almost kind of encourage them to keep it simple, where people are almost trying to over-engineer solutions?
Absolutely. And sometimes, so we call it taking fast food orders, because sometimes people will come to us and say, "I want a hamburger and a shake and some fries." And part of our program really has been to say, let's just like back up a second, pause a second. Like we're not going to hold up this process, making it, heavy, but we want to at least get your insights as to what you're really trying to accomplish. So, and sometimes just a quick question, like, what is the end, at the end of the day, what are you trying to accomplish? Back up and tell us that. You're just trying to get a meal, or like, you really want that hamburger, shake and fries. So it's absolutely part of our intake process is to meet with those folks and understand that they have an idea in mind, but we're the WalkMe experts, we're the digital adoption experts. And so we are always kind of throwing some ideas back across the fence to say, if this is where you want to go, here's some ideas too. So yeah, absolutely. And we like Michael, we give tons of demos across the organization. People get so excited by what they can do that sometimes they're the ones that are generating these really innovative ideas for us. And we're like, wow, yeah, maybe we can do that. And that pushes us to learn how to use WalkMe in a different way. So it's a nice two-way street. I will say, I think our program really is at the beginning of getting a value story out there that is using hard dollars. So, when Michael, when you were talking about bottom line and really increasing profit margins for anyone who is managing a program, I just want to encourage you to start to think like that. It doesn't come naturally to many of us who maybe come from instructional design or are creative types to try to translate that. But it's an incredibly important part of the story. So it's never too late. We're just starting the process now to figure out how we get those numbers out on a more consistent basis and who needs to see them. But it's hugely important. So just want to foot stomp that, building that into your program.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got really distracted thinking about hamburgers, fries, and shakes. I don't know about anybody else.
Sorry, it is lunchtime, isn't it? Well, here it is.
I think that's so great. And kind of like working with teams to bring it back up to that higher level value. It can be really tough, especially when you're getting bombarded, right, by all those types of different questions and requests. It sounds like it also kind of creates a new filter by which you can choose the projects that you work on and help prioritizing what it is that you're trying to affect within your organization by asking those questions up front. Kind of going back to, I think a lot about this, like, the idea of not setting it and forgetting it. I'm curious, this always feels like there's so much to build and there's so much to put out there. Do you find how do you often find times to go back and review versus build? Do you carve out time in your week or your month, or is that part of your release cycle? I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that question.
I can jump in. I can. With some of our groups, we have an actual regression testing. So once a year, we come back to whatever the content is. Workday is a really good example with open enrollment. We created a whole bunch of solutions last year. We're coming back in this year. We're verifying that everything's current and everything, like there's no processes that have changed or anything like that. So that is one way that we're doing it. But there are some others that they break or something changes within the UI, and we need to go back in there. But with most of our clients, we do have like weekly meetings with them, and so we do bring those. It's always an ongoing process, and so we try not to just leave anything out there.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really important too to take a look at those insights. If you see that engagement with your content is dropping, that's like a big red flag to say, is my content broken or just not relevant anymore? So we lean on insights there too. I will say it's a struggle, I think, for a lot of teams that are very lean to make sure that sustainment piece is built in. I think, again, having a cadence of time has kind of worked for us. It's definitely not a year. We're looking at it much more frequently, but internally having a cadence where we are taking some time out to review either the insights or the content and just do some pressure testing in the system. It's super important. And it's not easy to do, especially when you have a backlog of requests that you really want to get to carve out that time, but it's super important.
And I'd recommend linking it to another milestone that you have with the so think about, a lot of us are putting this over SaaS products and they have release schedules. So every time we have a major release, it's a really good opportunity to go in check all of your data on what's happening with WalkMe, with your content. We're gonna have to check it anyway to make sure there's no changes we need to make. So by tying those together, it kind of gives us oh, hey, I need to go do this. Because unless you're setting aside a couple hours every month to do it, it just keeps getting pushed off. Because it's easy to set it, oh, it's working. So we tend to do that with the major release schedules. We'll go through, test everything, look at all the analytics. And then any content requests we get come in, we actually have to prioritize them. We've got a Teams action list that's there, and we do it by the impact to the business. So again, it's coming down to that, what's the dollars back to the business, the highest ones get worked on first, and the nice to haves will get pushed to the bottom.
That's a really interesting point. Does the calculated impact to the business ever change the scope of the actual solution? You know, if it's a bigger impact, do you end up kind of building a bigger solution? Maybe that's what led to something like investing the time into building out an action bot.
Absolutely, because people tend to have an idea for their area. When you have a bigger group, that same idea, I'm like, man, that has an impact. Can we use that in other areas? And all of a sudden it starts growing. Like, man, it has a much bigger impact. And that one person didn't realize that their good idea can be used across everyone. So we try and think, can I bread and butter this across the entire organization? So it can grow from just one little idea to having a much bigger impact.
Oh, that's really fantastic. I'm curious, you know, when you think about that, you know, when you were starting to get into ActionBot, right? Definitely, I mean, this is the advanced session, right, for today's webinar. How did you go about learning about ActionBot and taking advantage of it? I know that maybe it's not necessarily everyone's first foray into WalkMe, but do you have any advice for folks getting started with it, learning about it? Any tips or just general best practices for them?
So my recommendation is, when we went on and started building content, is we bought a set of service hours with WalkMe. It's where I could go do some design work, learn in the Digital Adoption Institute with all those great videos through there, go try it out. And when I got stuck, I used some of those hours, and it was kind of a phone a friend to sit down and they'd walk me through it. So my recommendation, go create in your test environment a simple chat bot and start putting conversations in place. The interface is pretty intuitive for the basic, I'll call it basic chat bot, but it can still be fairly complex. Go create one, talk to yourself in a room for a while, and then sit down with the WalkMe professionals with your use case, with the little bit of knowledge you have, and then build it from there. So I said I had an hour every week sitting with my WalkMe professional and your services team, and they really taught me what I needed to know. And at the end of the day, you don't need to know everything. It's part of what I said. I'm a purchasing person. I'm not an IT. I don't know HTML coding. You don't need to. WalkMe support's there to help you when you get that really high-end technical stuff, but there's a lot of it you can do for yourself. So don't be afraid to just go create one.
I love that advice. Well, I think that we're kind of running up on time. If there's any sort of last questions, please bring them in. Otherwise, I think this has been super helpful. I'd love to help continue this conversation. I think we're probably going to have some stuff on community, so follow us there. Aaron, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to cover, but this has been super informative. I want to thank you all for being a part of this today and helping everybody learn more about WalkMe, how they're using these great solutions at your organizations, and helping everyone advance as DAP professionals.
Yeah, thank you to each of you. Thanks, Andrew, for moderating. This has been really informative. A couple things as we wrap up. First, as always, we like to hear your thoughts on the event today. So if you could take a couple seconds and answer the poll questions that I just put up on the screen, that would be really helpful. Also, a few things that I want to make sure everybody knows about. If you like this event, we've got more on the way. We've got our Watch Me Build series that continues tomorrow. This is an events heavy week, but we've got a focus on automation and validation tomorrow. Our customer success team is offering hands-on tips, technical best practices, and again, answers to your questions at 8 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. And on November 17th, if 8 a.m. Pacific's a little early for you, we've got another Watch Me Build on noon Pacific time. That one is on jQuery, which is always a hot topic. So hope to see you there. We also have the WalkMe webinar coming back after a couple of months of hiatus. So on November 16th, we're talking about CSS and how you can customize the look and feel of your WalkMe builds. And if you enjoyed the DAP Pro Show today, you can register for the December event already We're still finalizing some of our presenters for that, but the topic is going to be data strategy in practice, shifting from output to outcomes. So more about that coming soon. Be sure to watch the community for all of those events notifications. If you've got a colleague who's new to WalkMe, you've got the Welcome to WalkMe webinar that happens every month, talking about teams, tools, and resources to help you kickstart your journey to digital adoption success. And lastly, user groups are here. You've been asking for them. We're finally able to deliver those to you. We have some user groups available on the community and under the groups section of the main menu. So feel free to browse those, join the ones that are relevant to you. If you don't see one you want, be sure to let us know so we can talk about launching that for you. And we have some kickoff events as well for the groups that we've already launched that are starting next week. So be sure to check those out too. Lots going on. Hope you'll find something that's valuable to you. As you leave today, you do have the chance to provide any additional feedback about this event, future events, anything you want to tell us. All of that feedback is super helpful and relevant for us as we continue to develop our programming for you. So with all of that finally said, thanks again to everybody for joining us. Thank you for attending. Find us all in the community. The recording will be going out on the community as well as by email of today's event. So if you need to revisit that or share that too. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, everyone.